Where's the That is not me coughing, by the way, because I have my cafe con leche here. Oh,
It's invisible.
I hate that virtual in the background. This is too booze for me. I gotta swear. I don't have a grand piano. I have a Yamaha keyboard, but it's not the same thing. Well, we got somebody in the background there.
Whoops.
Is it on your side, Carlos?
I'm gonna fix it. Sorry. There you go. My bad.
We got a directional microphone, and it's working like a directional microphone. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is Sunday, and not just any Sunday. It's the first real Sunday since they sent out 22 letters of intention to actually give out licenses they promised close to 2 years ago. I mean, that sounds like a very minor thing for the idiots in Tallahassee to be able to handle, but they handled it in usual fashion. And we're going to find out more about that as we discuss this and other topics in the rotation. Whoa, now that is it. That's an update in our music too. That's a new mix.
Gary, I see you got an upgrade of a home too, man. The grand piano, nice touch.
Yeah, that's not my piano. This is under Boo's virtual background, and that's what I clicked on. So it makes us look me like I actually make a living. Although
I like the new software because I like having a virtual background. It makes it look like I'm in DC rather than just my home. So it's half decent.
Yeah, if DC had enough pollution to have a green sky. But we're going to get into that later. Ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce ourselves. First off, my name is Gary Stein. I'm the political director for Suncoast Normal and our master of public health, which means I know all that stuff that you're putting up on the internet is bullshit, and I know what's real and what isn't, so watch it. Secondly, down below me, I have our master of business administration, our deputy director, Carlos Jose Angel Armida.
Thank you, everybody. Hey, such a warm welcome. Thank you.
And by the way, he is an agnostic vegetarian. Don't ask me how that works, but it does. He believes in something. I think it's vegetables. And in the upper right-hand corner, our executive director, coming to us from D.C., where he's been hanging out across the White House for the last couple of days for some reason. I think he's casing the joint.
Hey, calm down, Gary. I don't need the Secret Service blowing up my spot for no reason.
Why is the Capitol
Okay. Secret Service knows your ass. Trust me on this one.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely on a list somewhere. A list of people who smoke weed, that's for sure.
And another guy who happened to get on a fairly prestigious list coming up this week, our friend Randy Rembert from Rembert Farms. Randy, how you doing today?
Hey, I can't complain. How are you guys doing?
Now, let me give you guys a little bit of background, and then we'll discuss all the things that have been going on. In 2017, when they first started putting together the laws for the new medical program, they discussed what would be the new expansion of all the licenses. Now, it started out when we had just the CBD programs, that all they asked for is just a diversity program for the MMTCs. Whatever the heck that meant. I think that the folks over in Northern Florida figured, well, if I have a female CEO, that's close enough, right? Yeah, that's a minority license, isn't it?
That's what they ruled in Alabama.
Yeah, that is exactly what they ruled in Alabama. We got to discuss some of the rulings in Alabama and Texas and California this week because there's been things all over the map. I got to tell you that. But one of the things, so they finally decided that they were going to give out one minority license to a member of the Black Farmers Association and Agricultural Society, who was also a member of the pig food class, which was a huge lawsuit from about almost 30 years ago now, that allowed a recompense for all the black farmers who got screwed on their farm loans for so many years. And it was a good idea in theory. Unfortunately, the Black Farmers Association was a closed group, and so therefore it had to go through litigation because you can't offer licenses to a closed group that cannot get more members, and that group was closed. And so it went through litigation for years, and I mean years. I mean up until now, practically. And then they finally decided, well, let's go ahead and put out an application just for minority farmers, and we'll give out one. Well, isn't that wonderful? One
That
license.
sounds like a half-ass approach to reparations, if you ask me, Gary.
Well, one license is not equity. One license is tokenism, and that is just by definition of the word. But folks worked on that, and they figured that was a way to go. And then when that kind of failed, because the guy who owned the one who got the original license, actually the one who won the license, died a few months after the applications went out. And of course, it took almost a year for them to get those licenses actually corrected. So that the company that worked on that license has been in litigation all these years, trying to get that license to the ascendants of the guy who died, Monton Hopkins, and they gave it to the next guy down, who's been working for the next couple of years after that to sell it. Of course, his license is held up also because of litigation. And that led to the next thing, where approximately 19 months ago, they said they were going to go ahead and finally put out an application for the other 22 licenses they've been holding on to for the last 8 years. Well, 6 years, whatever. And they said that they were going to give out 3 more licenses to the black farmers who could actually fix their license applications to do better. Of course, they had to put out a chunk of money, and Randy's going to go into that in just a moment. And after all that is said and done, 19 months after the applications were finally scored, I'm surprised more applicants didn't die during that time. They finally put together 22 licenses of intent, and we'll see how this goes. I know litigation is coming, but I know, Randy, you must be excited as hell to be one of those guys that got onto that list.
Right. And then it's like we've been awarded. I appreciate being awarded, but now we still have do our bond within 10 days, and then we still have to do cultivation clearance within 60 days, and then we have to have a patient within 180 days. So it's like the work is done, but now we still gotta, now it really begins. It's almost like the playoffs. It's like you make it to the playoffs and you don't even get a chance to celebrate because you're getting ready for the next game. That's pretty much
what happens if you don't make any of those deadlines?
Then they have the right to reject your license and license and allow it to just basically be up, but the team and the team members on it would not be allowed to get a license.
Wait, can you describe that process again? What was that process?
So the first one is a bond. You have to get a $5 million bond within 10 days. For whatever reason, they gave us 20.
Bond. Yeah, go ahead.
And then you have to get a cultivation clearance. Cultivation clearance basically means you got 2 structures, electricity, plenty of water, and pretty much you're sanitizing and clean. And then after that, you actually have to do processing. Processing, you got, I think, 120 days. Pretty much need a dry area, hot water, cold water, that's also sanitized, and then you have 180 days to serve your first patient, which is basically one person. So one person has to be in a position to buy flower from you within that 180 days.
Now, does that, I had a question on the patient thing. Does that require you to have a brick and mortar retail shop, or can you just start doing like direct delivery? Just curious of how the retail side of that works.
It can be direct delivery. So from there, you have to do your dispensary clearance, which is later on. But case in point, a couple of the stores or license holders right now from 2 years ago, they're only they don't have a brick and mortar place.
They're only delivering. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have
only delivers right now. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think they're only doing delivery because they just don't have volume and the capacity just yet. So that's another thing, is that a lot of people are building the infrastructure up. Even in our situation, we're building up our infrastructure, but in our situation, I'm already in Florida and I've already been growing hemp the whole time. So it's a little easier transition for us than say some of the other people who were surprised that they won. There was a lot of people that were surprised that they won, and then there's also was a lot of people that were surprised that they lost as well.
And those people who were surprised they lost, they're planning on suing, aren't they?
Talking to most of them, yes. Some of them are pretty much trying to partner up. So a lot of the licenses were kind of like a money grab almost for some people, but then other people were like genuinely growers. Other people were genuinely salespeople. Other people were medical directors. So those people who have research and different things like that, they're probably gonna merge with another company and bring their resources over to another license as opposed to suing. If you're gonna sue, it's going to be a good 2 years or so, best case scenario, and you're probably going to spend almost $300,000. So it's like, do you waste your time suing on something you technically may or may not have grounds on, or can you take that $300,000 to another team and just get added on with that license?
Mm.
Randy,
Randy, I gotta ask the main license holders now, before this last round, have all been essentially sold to multi-state operators. Some may have started in Florida, but they're multi-state. There are no really true Florida-based, Florida-grown businesses anymore in the current market. How do you feel as a Florida-based, Florida-grown business, trying to compete with these multi-state operators? Do you think that it gives you a bit of that real genuine feel, or do you feel as though you're competing against essentially like a mom and pop hardware store going up against the big box boys in the retail side of things?
So McDonald's is never gonna be able to compete with just a completely different place. And being from Florida, born and raised, been agriculture my whole life, that is impossible to even track how I'm doing. I've been doing it for so long. All that being said, Florida is very territorial, and they want the good old boy. They want the good story. They want the person to go to that they can ride on their back as far as the coach. So come to us and give us an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to do the right thing and give them good products as well. So as long as we give good quality products that they can't get nowhere.
Jeez.
Yeah.
As
y'all, Randy is on the farm, actually in a remote part of was it Hawthorne out there in Alachua County. So cell service can be a little tricky. Wi-Fi even more so. Gary, you're in Hernando. You know how it is with the Wi-Fi. So, but
yeah, my Wi-Fi keep going out. Sorry about that. But
hey, you're on the farm. It's okay.
Sounded like you were trying to make a distinction, saying I think what you were saying was that McDonald's isn't able to compete with mom and pop places. Right?
They can't, because it's a different taste. We're only going to it can be very good, those 5 events, and that's what we're working on doing, is being ourselves. Craft brewers, that's the big beer company. Craft brewery. Craft breweries do very well because they bring that.
Yeah, well, Randy, it's going in and out like a transformer, but yeah, we definitely get the point of craft breweries versus the big ones and such. So, I think the next question, just wanted to follow up with you, is the process of he's gone. So when he reconnects, I'll ask my question. Yeah.
While he's trying to figure out his Wi-Fi, we actually have a question that you two might be able to answer in the chat. David Marsh asked, "What is the purpose of the $5 million performance bond?"
All right, let's try this again.
No, you're
sorry about
that. Randy, we got a question from the chat. It's asking, what's the purpose of the $5 million bond?
That's a good question. We try to figure out too, but the best way to explain it is they want to make sure that if anything were to happen and it was based around the company, that a person is going to be financially compensated. A bond, in essence, is insurance. So if something were to happen, a death or something like that, that $5 million would be able to ensure that the company is covered.
Yeah, and we've seen that in other states. These multi-state operators have had employees pass away at their, production facilities, whether that's been, True Leave in Massachusetts, or, we've seen some other ones. I think the other one was Green something, GTI might have been in Chicago, or might have been Cure Leaf. I got to go back and see what that other one was, but we've seen those type of things. I think some of the photos we've seen leaked online from these existing dispensaries have been just horrifying to see mold, to see pests. So it's almost a shocker to think that no patients haven't gotten sick from some of the booth and some of the things that these folks have been selling. Not to mention the botanical pesticides that are approved, with pyrethroids that shouldn't necessarily be on, medical marijuana. So there's a lot to be said around why the performance bond exists. But for a lot of people, they feel as though maybe that performance bond is there to keep the small mom and pop operators from even being able to enter into the market. So, there's a lot of criticism around it, but I definitely get the point that you made around making sure that folks, are going to be able to protect from a liability point of view. Obviously, this isn't a traditional business in the federal sense because of the Schedule 1 status of cannabis. The states are kind of on their own. So this, I understand maybe the legislature trying to put in a safeguard here with everything. So, it's understandable, especially on the recent rulings that you can't go bankrupt essentially as a cannabis business if you're selling medical marijuana.
Not until they pass the SAFE Act.
So, and I think it's important to point out that there's a lot of barriers to entry into this, but in addition, it's not like Randy signed up for the license earlier this year and got picked up. Like this was a 10-year process.
Right.
Well, like you said, the people who actually have applied, all they had to have is a license as a business in Florida for the last 5 years as the minimum basis for being able to get an application in. And how much was the cost of the application?
It was like $146,000 or something like that. And then
Yeah.
also let me clarify the bond. So when you do a bond, it's not that you have to bring dollars, it's percent based. So if you bring $5 million, you have to actually $50,000.
As soon as I
And
have
you
it.
go, and then you get, once you pay the $50,000, then the bond company will issue you a bond for $5 million. So total is almost like $200,000 plus legal fees, around another $100,000 or so.
So for those folks who have been interacting with the criminal justice system, similar to a bail bond, you don't got to put up the entire amount, just a percentage, and then the bonder will cover the rest.
But that's still a lot of money to put out. I mean, that is like a steep hill to climb. So number one, pay $140,000 just for the application fee and sit on that for a year and a half waiting to find out if you're going to get a license. And that was non-refundable, correct?
Correct.
Gee, I wonder where that money goes to. Let's ask Casey DeSantis and see what she spends it on this time. But now, Casey,
are you insinuating that the First Lady of Florida spends it on the frivolous stuff in the governor's mansion?
Well, let's just say, and I heard this from a very unreliable source, that that Casey DeSantis is going to be put into the lieutenant governor spot after DeSantis goes ahead and puts Nunes into the Senate. And then when DeSantis goes to become the Secretary of Defense, we're going to have Governor Casey DeSantis.
I am glad that came from an unreliable source, because that makes my heart palpitate just a little bit.
Or we could have Laura Trump as a senator. But we're not going to get into that rigmarole and flotsam and jetsam, because it really does give me a massive headache.
Well, but, Randy, I have a question for you, and I know a lot of folks who are in the hemp sector probably want to know is what was the parallels and some of the things that felt different. But the application process for being a hemp business versus the application process for becoming a medical marijuana business.
I don't think you like that question.
No,
I filled out a couple hemp license applications, and they were fairly easy, like a couple pages, and you'd be done, within a few hours. This was a job where you have to actually hire experts and sometimes pay as much as $100,000 to finish the application. If you have all these lobbyists and experts and lawyers who come in to help you fill out the application, because this is basically a gamble. You put out $140,000 for an application in the hopes that you'll get a license. Now, that means you can either work that farm and work that product and create that brand, or do what many people are going to do who get that license, is flip it and sell it to an MSO. So I think we have a great idea to go ahead and have a gambling pool here. And if you can guess how many of the 22 licenses are going to flip and how many are actually going to grow and produce product and actually be competition to the current 22, put in your guess to us, and we will give you a prize if you win. And I have no idea what that is because I don't have any money for prizes.
Randy, I definitely want to mention before any Wi-Fi issues happen again. We had a nice conversation before we started the show, and I asked you if you and I worked and went up to Tallahassee to give public comment many times about these hemp bills, and as a hemp farmer, right? You are now going into the cannabis realm. It's what most hemp people really want to do. But you said that you're actually required to continue growing hemp.
So there's a Florida statute that says that if you're a cultivator for a MMTC, you also have to cultivate hemp as well. So while hemp people are not required to do weed people are absolutely required to do hemp. So if you check the old MMU website, you'll see that low THC, aka hemp THC, is actually a big seller for a lot of the different companies. So the reason that they're selling it is because the law requires for them to sell it.
Now, this is something that I've been worried about for a number of years, and that is we have a plant which can grow 22 feet, and they're taking the top foot off, the cola, knocking that off and making product out of it, and the other 21 feet, all the husk and the bast and the herd, they lay on the ground, and eventually they either become hay or they let it go to rot. And yet this is one of the mainstays of the reason why you had to grow hemp in the colonial days, is because that stuff is industrial gold. They use it for rope. They use it for creating paper. You can use it for thousands and thousands of uses. And yet we don't do it here in Florida because no one ever set up an infrastructure for that product to be sold by the farmers to make their living. Now, I'll grant you, we already have some major problems with farms over the next 4 years. If they're going with the current economic plan that they plan on doing, we're putting on tariffs with other countries that'll block the trade of our farm goods to other countries. Right. People often forget about that. And so I see farmers as having a rough go of it if they don't have some kind of contingency plan, and you got a great one. as being in this industry. And it's good to know that you're already growing hemp, so you don't have to worry about that. But it's still a major hill to climb just to get cultivating and processing and distributing in that short period of time if you haven't got your infrastructure built for your farm. And yet so many people, they waited 19 months. Were they going to build and then wait to see if they were going to be able to use it?
So when you were talking about the numbers, those are some of the numbers that was not being factored in. Like some of these leases for the dispensaries, we were paying for the lease. For the farms, we had to pay the farms to keep going. Like we still had farm workers. We had to get them a job because every single month we were expecting to be announced. Even in our situation where the bill passed, I think in June, we were waiting this whole time just to get that announcement any day. So that whole time we're still paying bills to all of these different places, legal fees, farm fees, dispensary fees, security fees. We're paying all these fees and just throwing money away that it was almost like draining people. So all 76 of those people, some did not have that infrastructure. So now what they have to go do is go buy an existing infrastructure and pay an outrageous rate where they probably could have built it up for $500,000. Now they have to go take from their budget and go pay $3 or $4 million cash.
So if you were a farm that existed that did not grow hemp,
Mhm.
uh, and you suddenly got your license, how much money would you have to put into your business to get it up and going and meet those deadlines in time?
Bare minimum $100,000, but realistically $500,000, $500,000 minimum. And I say that because you're gonna have to have your lights set up. You're gonna have to make sure your water is good enough. You're gonna have to have ACs at a certain level. All of these things, your lights can cost you $1,000 a piece. So if you got 10 or 100, then I mean they adds up very fast. Like even in our situation, we could use a storage container, but storage containers are what, $5,000 right now? And then you have to go buy the lights. You have to set the installation up. You can go buy a turnkey solution. Turnkey solution is $50,000. Then you got to bring it to your property, and then the state statute says you have to have two structures. So now you have two of those, $50,000 a piece. That's $100,000. That's bare minimum. Realistic setup, no. You're starting at $500,000, and you can easily get up to $3 million for the right setup.
Dude, you've been through so much just to get this license. Like,
Right.
and you originally applied back in 2014. So this is like a decade of going through this process, right?
Exactly. So I actually got on the past 4 years, but when I started, my beard was all black. So it's just how I have the
How-
pictures. It's it was
you,
all
you
black beard, but it's just what happened the past 4 years dealing with trying to get a license in the state of Florida.
were you expecting, like, you must have been discouraged for most of this process, right? Like were you surprised to get this license, or
We weren't surprised because we knew what was wrong. So I'll just say with Crusoe, which I'm a part of, and Robinson, they wanted a 5-year business, but how can you give a 5-year business um, um, for a 90-something-year-old and a 101-year-old lady? They're
yeah,
not in business anymore. They're retired. So
yeah,
what happened is a month or two before the application was actually submitted, they added the statute back on. So initially they took the statute off that you don't need 5-year business. Then a month or two prior to the application, they added it back on. So we had to talk to the legislator. My partner talked to the legislator over and over again. That day that they added the amendment on, I was actually in Tallahassee speaking on behalf as well. If that amendment never would have been added on, then we still wouldn't have gotten the license. We would have had to go to the federal courts to hopefully sue and get in.
And,
yeah.
and,
It
and
sounds
just so you
like,
know, that this particular amendment he's talking about, it said that those people who did not get the license for the first application process, which only offered one license, which of course is still in litigation because the widow of Monton Hopkins and her ascendants are all still trying to get that license back from the guy who's trying to sell it. Uh, it's been an absolutely horrendous long process for you. Obviously, enough to drain the average person out. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they really don't want minority licenses. They don't want to make it any. They actually made it harder. The original application fee was only 67,000, but when it got to you, it was already 140,000.
wow.
Right.
And
Correct.
again, how do you do that if you're a farm just trying to make ends meet without bringing in venture capital? And venture capital right now is few and far hard to come by, and that is why the M&A kings are kind of hovering over all these 22 licenses right now. That means mergers and acquisitions. These are the people who look to buy those licenses and go ahead and flip them, because if you can't afford the amount to get the performance bond and get everything going for the infrastructure in time, you're not going to have a license. So is that you have to either flip or fly, essentially.
Well, Gary, the same issues that Randy's encountering, as a farmer, are the same issues that all farmers across America tend to encounter. Up here in Maryland, I tend to get my meat directly from the farm because I don't trust the meat industry anymore in a lot of ways because of deregulation and such. And a pound of ground beef at the local family farm is $10.99, but you can go to the store and get it for $8.99. Organic beef and whatnot, and then even cheaper if you're going to get the non-organic stuff. So, the fact that most of farming in America comes from factory farming, and you don't get that high quality that people like Randy, the small farmer, and the effort they put into their stuff, that's really going to be the difference. And so when I asked Randy earlier about competing, I mean, that's going to definitely have to also be a marketing point of view for a lot of these smaller farmers is, hey, we take the time to put our stuff together, even though it may be a little bit more pricey than say the stuff you can get at True Booth, it's worth the quality, and I think that's going to be definitely a key point in the longevity of being in an industry where you got to compete, like you said, where the mom and pop burger shops got to go up against McDonald's, or the mom and pop hardware store going up against Home Depot, Lowe's, and such.
So we got a question in the chat again. David Marsh is asking how many acres are used for growing. How big exactly is your facility, Randy?
We have 5.13 acres, but realistically, if you're going to talk about weed, it's really a half an acre to an acre is all you need. Most of the time, and everybody's experience is different, but a lot of people want to go indoor. Our best crops and some of the best crops I've seen from other people have actually been outdoors. But even then, like with a quarter acre, you could do about 1,000 plants or so. But in general, you want to do pretty much one plant per 1,000 square feet. That's if you're stuffing it. If you want them to have space, then you're talking about one plant per 3,000 per 3 square feet. So say a 900 square foot building, you are only going to put 100 plants to possibly up to 900 plants. So it all depends upon your indoor infrastructure. I will say when you go indoor, you're going to have a lot more problems because there's not going to be any beneficial pests, beneficial bacteria. So you're going to have to introduce those beneficials to counteract the bad stuff. The bad stuff is always going to find you. So the bad mold, bad bugs, they're smaller and they're more persistent. So if you don't add on the good stuff, you're going to have a lot more issues that you're going to have to check on all the time.
Randy, I'm glad you said that because so many people think, oh, I've grown weed in my closet. I can do this. I can be a farmer. They probably have no idea the challenges of growing both outdoor, indoor in Florida, dealing with pests, molds, and such. So I'm glad you mentioned that for folks.
Now, outdoor does not mean a hoop garden, right? It means actually outdoors as in totally sunshine grown where pollen can actually fly from another field and actually come towards your crop if there's another hemp crop down the way, and go ahead and impregnate all your females.
Exactly. So outdoor is like true outdoor. Now, in our particular situation, we use shade cloth. I don't know if I don't know what burns them, but that direct sun is no joke. This new sun is not the same sun we had 30 years ago. So this new sun, we have to use shade cloth. Otherwise, the plants will get burned up. So a little bit of shade cloth or even a greenhouse with shade cloth is pretty much all you need for outdoor. Or some people even say that greenhouse is technically outdoor. We typically call greenhouse, outdoor, and indoor. And if you're going to be successful, you have to do all three. Now, technically in the Florida statute, it says indoor only, but technically people are still growing medical cannabis outside from what I've heard. I know at one point, the Big Leave, they had 100 acres that they were planning to start growing outside, and they ended up selling that facility outside of Alachua, Florida. So I'm not sure, like the hard part with the laws and the statutes, it's not criminal. So therefore, everything is not being enforced. If you go look at the old MMU website, there's plenty of people who are not growing THC, low THC at all. When the Florida statute says all 50 of us need to be growing low THC, but there's some people who cookies that haven't grown any low THC in the state of Florida at all yet.
Do
Well,
you
this is-
grow anything else other than cannabis and hemp? Or
So we've been growing greens, peas, watermelons since the day I was born. My parents are fourth generation farmers, and when they came to Florida, this is all we did was just farm. We might have a goat and a cow here and there, but greens, peas, watermelons was like our main thing.
do the
And-
goats eat the hemp?
Absolutely. The deer will eat them as well. And on occasions, the pigs will eat them as well. So it's like those are the other pests. Those are the big pests that can be solved a lot easier. It's the tiny pests that we get upset about because they're so small that by the time they do the damage, if you found the damage, it's already in infestation.
But as far as animal feed, hemp is superb. So you probably have some very healthy animals on the farm there.
Yeah, so the animals we did have were definitely healthy. The deer was healthy easy too. One night they probably got, when I was in an open field, it was an acre I was growing, they got me for a good pound one night. And all they did was bite the types of the spears. So even if there was multiple branches, I think I counted like 16 plants they went to. They would bite the top of it, go to the next one, bite the top off of that one, go off the top of that one, and then they will lick the rosin out of the stems and then go off somewhere.
All right, so Bambi, I know you're king of the forest out there somewhere. You owe Randy 16 zips. Okay?
Man, Bambi was zooted. Bambi was absolutely zooted that night. Hey, we got a question here in the chat, and folks want to know: is the hemp crop grown seasonally, or is that an annual?
We do it seasonally. So the annual crops are done when it's done on a massive scale. So when you see Oregon, Colorado do 100 acres, that's a lot of work. And physically, to do that twice a year or 3 times a year, somebody's probably going to have a heart attack or a stroke. And then on top of that, they don't have the weather. So once that first frost hard frost come or snow, pretty much it's going to kill a lot of the juvenile to small plants. Now the mothers are probably going to be fine, but in those areas where it's going to snow heavy, they can't afford to do multiple crops. Now they can go inside just like we're inside, but Florida is one of those unique places where we can have several crops. We can do 4 crops a year as long as you have supplemental lighting.
Now, we work in 3 dimensions. So when you're talking about an acre,
Oh, yes,
that's
sir.
just the ground. It doesn't say how much you can do vertically. And so when you are indoors, does that actually limit the size of the plant based on where the roof is, or you scoff it down so that it only goes to a certain height?
So it depends. Like if you're doing a mother, like I had a mother, she was just under 10 foot tall. So it was kind of hard for her, and I ended up having to flower her out because she was so big. But in general, you own a rotation. So the rotation is not going to allow them to get over 3 foot tall. So even with 8 foot tall ceilings sitting on a 2 foot tall table, you still have some space there where the plant is not going to start pushing on the roof.
So if you're going for Bast and herd, does that have to be outdoors then?
Does it have to be outdoors?
As if you're going to use the Bast and the herd as a commercial crop, the biomass underneath the cola, is that going to have to be done outdoors in order to make that a commercial crop for you?
It would be best to be outdoors because it's biomass, you're all about weight. So indoor greenhouse is quality plus weight. But outdoors is weight then quality because they're going to take all that biomass, literally put it into a big washing machine, extract isolate, distillate, make gummies, make topicals, make the coffee, infused coffee. So it doesn't really matter the quality. You just got to get enough weight between the stems, the leaves, the bud, that can be harvested to where they can get enough.
And obviously that takes some time to build that kind of infrastructure up so you can get the timing right and get the cultivars right and keep your genetics solid, because you don't want the genetics to stray if things get cross pollinated and things of that sort. That's one thing we have a problem
Exactly.
with in Florida, is that we have cultivars, and you guys can call them strains if you want, but that's viruses. Uh, if you have a cultivar, it is for a specific reason, and not just to be able to call it some stupid name like grandma's rotting teeth or whatever else you want to call the next new strain. It's I think we have a medical program here in Florida, and I think we've kind of forgotten the fact that certain cultivars work towards certain disabling conditions. And I would like
Right.
to see the new licenses coming out turn the tables on the other licenses and actually start being medical. In other words, by saying this is a strain, this is a Hong Kong style strain, it is good for migraines, et cetera, has a high amount of CBN, has a certain terpene profile, and therefore it's good medically. Now, guys, I sent you a Judge Judy the other day. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it or not. It was on Freevee, but it was this guy who was selling CBD ice cream, infused ice cream in Minnesota. And every time he was mentioning his crops, Judge Judy would say, "What is that good for?" And all
Mm,
he could say is it's good for getting you high. And what she was asking was, what's the medical benefit? Because Minnesota has a medical program, but
right.
that's not the way they're running it. And he was actually running it off the Farm Bill of 2018, so he wasn't actually in a medical program at all. But she didn't know that.
Well, Gary,
But
I'm glad you mentioned that because that kind of segue into kind of the bone I have to pick with the existing MMTCs, not just in Florida, but these multi-state operators. Period. I picked up one of these the other day in Maryland from a place called Live Well, and I was shocked because as I was smoking it, I noticed that the THC and THCA content, and this is being sold at a medical, adult use dispensary, but it has less than 1% THC. Essentially, this is essentially hemp mostly,
Mm,
But then, I go to this one that I picked up at Calvin Johnson at Megatron's dispensary in Michigan, and it actually has 27% THC out of a total 30% THCA. So, you got these small mom and pop, black owned dispensaries actually producing high quality bud. And then you got this bullshit from the MSOs that they're selling as actual high quality weed. And it's the same stuff I could get at Chillum. So it's like, what the hell?
that is why we need folks like Randy getting into the business, because they know the plant, they know the industry, and they know the benefits, and they understand the genetics. And that is something that it seems to be going far away. Now, in putting this show together, I was trying to reach out to Donnie Clark, who famously created the Mayaka Gold strain back in the 1980s, and he was given lifetime in prison for it. And he actually was pardoned by Clinton, and he got out. I think it was 2001, 2003, and he had a long history of interesting cultivation techniques in the Mayaka River. And one of the eddies in the swamps outside, he actually sank 55-gallon drums, and he was growing out of the drums in the swamp. And he used the canopy as cover so they wouldn't catch him. Of course, he had a lot of shade, but he made a very rich crop that was very high. It was an Afghani strain that he put together that he called Mayaka Gold, and that was actually the strain that actually stopped the the ALS disease that Kathy Jordan had, and actually saved her life. And this is interesting. In the 1980s, in order to preserve his genetics, he was taking all the seeds out and making certain that everything was put into vacuum formed bags that he put into cold storage. So 20 years after he finished cultivating, he still had stock out there. And it was totally seedless. It was like Sensimillion at the time before it was Sensimillion. And so I wanted to bring him on. Unfortunately, I talked to his girlfriend, and he developed Alzheimer's style dementia in 2021, and it was just recently put into a facility. And I asked him, can you get him some product to help him out? And he said, sorry, but the facilities don't allow that.
Ah, Jesus.
So here we have a monumental amount of knowledge in regards to cultivation in Florida. And I'll sideline Certera, when they first came out, started putting out a product which they called Mayaka Gold, which was not anywhere near the product it was, because it was a sativa. It was an indica rather, and the original Macagold was a sativa. So they had no knowledge of the actual original origins of that particular thing. They just wanted to put out the name and sell it as branding. And it's always marketing and profits over patients. And that would be a damn shame because everybody thought, hey, that's Mayaca Gold. That's the one that actually treats ALS. And they got us some of it. It wouldn't treat them. It most
Randy,
likely would cause more crap.
Randy, I gotta ask you: are you already you already know what strains you're gonna come out or cultivars you're gonna come out with?
So piggyback off of Gary, if you go on Weed Maps, there's almost 9,000 strands available over the years to come. I want to test all of them for the very particular thing. Like I said last time, I just got into cannabis 5 years ago, a little over 5 years, because my mom did have a tumor. She had a tumor in her jaw. Thankfully, it has been removed, and she has a permanent jaw now. But when I did the research, I found the research of CBG. So I don't even really grow CBD. I really only grow CBG because I realized that that is the backbone of all cannabinoids. So I'm heavy CBG, have my own personal strands of CBG that I have rebred over and over for the state of Florida. So we have those, and you can cross a lot of that stuff like that. But when you do the research where people say how great weed is, it's usually no straight weed per se. It's a CBD, it's a CBG, even like a Jamaican Lion. Jamaican Lion are only 10% THC, but it's 10% CBD, 10% CBG. So all the pain relief, all the relaxation of a person believing that they're high, they're not even being high. It's all the cannabinoids working together. And that's what I want to be able to do by being into this space, trying all the different strands, and then also crossing our own personal strands. Also, every year it switches. So it's cookies, then it's the gelatos, then it's the Skittles. This year coming up is the blues. All of that is still back crossed by original genetics. So a Kush, a OG Kush, a Hindu Kush, a Afghani type strand. I want to be able to bring back all the original ones. The peanut butter breath, the KwaZulu, different stuff like that, that are original genetics that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Those will be the basis for the crossing. I don't want to take, no offense, no cookies or anything like that and cross it. I want to be able to cross it with some of the original heirlooms, the original genetics, to see what can we get. There was on the hieroglyphics in Africa, it shows that they were doing brain surgery on top of using cannabis at the same time. So there has to be a strand somewhere there in Africa that does work towards brain cancer. It's just, to Gary's point, there's been so much focus on money and not enough focus on research. And I want to be able to be in this space to actually do the research, because I got into cannabis almost 5 years ago because of the research.
Now, OG is Original Genetics. That was originally a Florida company, even though it was not an actual real company because it was not legal. Correct?
Right.
I definitely have to mention about CBG. I tend to keep 3 or 4 CBG products on my shelves. And one of the best indication in a company like this is like the people that work for the company, what do they take?
Exactly.
And about half of my employees swear by CBG. They've come across the product, they tried it, they found the best results from that particular cannabinoid, and they use it quite a bit.
And one of the things about cannabiganol, which is CBG, is that it actually reduces interocular pressure, which means a person who has glaucoma can get relief from the CBG, provided it's in, again, a mix of proper terpenes and things of that sort that delivers it to the brain in a proper way, so you can reduce that interocular pressure and save your eyesight, or regain your eyesight in some instances.
Right.
But we're going to lose all that if we don't concentrate on the things you're talking about.
Right.
And I haven't seen anything from any of the current MMTCs to move towards any kind of an idea of actually creating the products for the patients as opposed to for the profits.
Okay, here's the thing. I want to highlight some things here. One of the biggest issues with what Gary's saying about, a dispensary not being so medical and leaning more towards recreational or adult use or whatever it is. One of the biggest issues is training. It is very, very difficult for somebody to pick up that knowledge. First off, I mean, in order to be able to do what we're suggesting, right, this person needs to be familiar with topics in botany and horticulture. They got to be familiar with medicine, with the human body, with particular conditions, certain pharmacological aspects, right? It's a lot, and it's particularly difficult for an MMTC, particularly a vertically integrated MMTC, to provide that type of training to its employees. Uh, uh, I understand that you want to cultivate these medical strains that are high in CBG, and provide those strains. But is there anything that, like, in order to provide this training, or like, how can you get over that hump? And this is kind of a question to everybody, not just Randy.
Oh, I have an answer for that, actually.
Go for it.
Okay, every MMTC has to have a medical director, correct?
Right.
Correct.
And that medical director is not just there to say, I'm the medical director, I fulfill a need, and so therefore let's go on from here. I think that guy should be in charge of training the staff with the knowledge that he has as medical director for that particular company, and help the cultivators work with strains that actually work towards medical conditions. What would be so wrong with that, since a medical director has to have some kind of medical training, and hopefully training in cannabis? They used to have at least a 20-hour course. They knocked down to a 4-hour course at one point in time for medical doctors to actually give out the recommendations in the first place. I think there needs to be a lot of onus on the medical director. They do get paid well, and they must be in every MMTC, so they're right there.
Mm-hmm.
You see that as an option, Randy?
Yes, I agree. And see, I used to work at UPS, and before they would allow us out on the floor, we were in the classroom for 5 days straight. So,
Right.
to your point, we did 40 hours of just knowledge and teaching us the safety, the protocols of a 100-year-old company. So, I think that it's important for all MMTCs before they allow a person to start working at the dispensary, or even before they even get into the cultivation aspect. They need to know the history of cannabis. They need to know the different cannabinoids they need to know about CBN. They need to know about CBG. They need to know about CBD. And it's important, to Gary's point, that we have the medical directors that maybe produce a small pamphlet, produce a small book, and then we also make sure that the person is studying this knowledge by not only testing them but retesting them over time.
In order to work in Chillum, there's a certain training process that we go through. It's not as formal as it may sound, but there are 4 tests that you need to go through, and the last test, right, is a 125 question test. So there's a lot of knowledge that's kind of passed on in the training period. And I'm telling you, those 4 tests, even though I'll be honest with you, they're not designed for anybody to fail. They're not really like, there's no real if somebody fails the test, then we're going to sit down with them and work with them to make sure that they get the knowledge in and everything like that. But those 4 tests go a long way in separating the experience here at Chillum to, some head shop. You know what I mean? Or buying hemp at the gas station and shit like that.
Right.
It really separates us. I'm looking at a store filled with people right now, and they're talking to the employees, in order to gain this knowledge. And that's that's the wrong way. But yeah, there's a bunch of people in here right now, just asking questions about hemp and mushrooms. So it can be difficult, but I agree with you, Gary, using that medical director and putting something in the training process in order to make sure that there's some sort of knowledge. It inspires the employees to at least discuss and work together and share experiences with the customers, and build their knowledge as they're moving.
Well, again, we have a book here
Yeah.
that was written by Paul Armentano, who works for National Normal, and it is an excellent primer to help people understand the concept of medical cannabis. I think every medical director should have a copy of this, and I think every employee should have a copy of this. And Chris, tell them how they can get copies.
You can actually go to normal.org. You can check out on the Normal shop, and you can purchase a copy for yourself. You can use it to argue with your uncle this coming holiday season at the dinner table. There's definitely an opportunity for folks to, of course, always enrich and educate themselves by going to normal.org and checking out those resources. Now, as we come to the top of the hour here, I just want to end on my final thought in the sense that I'm glad Randy's getting into the business. I'm glad that we have these new folks coming in, because the fact is that far too long the profits in Florida and trying to recoup the amount of investment for various investors, we've seen the MMTCs go to scale. And the fact is that America was never built for giant corporations to run things. We've always been essentially, the American dream has been small mom and pop shops, owners, farms, being able to bring their products to market, being able to serve the communities that they live and thrive in. And the industrial revolution, the 20th century, where we are now, we've switched more to a service economy where our own agricultural sector, our communication sector, everything is owned by just a handful of businesses. And so, Florida really has been ground zero for the commercialization of medical cannabis in a way that does not put the patients first. And so I am thrilled to have Randy Rembert and Rembert Family Farms, partnering up with other local cultivators and making this happen. So, Carlos, if you could put the spotlight on Randy, I want him to give his final thoughts and how folks can support what they can do, and look forward to, if he can reveal it, what the product names are going to be, and when they can expect to be able to purchase his amazing cultivations.
So the hope is that for the next quarter, hopefully by May of next year, we will have our first products out. Well, the company name should be Allowed Exotics, barring that anything has to change. And then we're still going to have the Rembert Family Farms at the Allowed Exotics. The first quarter, we're probably only going to be doing deliveries, but the second quarter, we should be able to have a dispensary going in Gainesville, Jacksonville, Miami, Tallahassee, Dustin, and West Palm Beach. And from there, just support us. The more support we get, we're not taking money and putting it into our retirement. We're putting it back towards more research, more development. We're trying to just make things a lot better for Florida. We're trying to more so focus on the patient and focus on the problems. We technically don't have a rec here yet, so we are in the medical element of this business, and we want to make sure that we concentrate on the patients and get the patients that's coming to have health to get that health. As far as strands, everything that's out there now, we're also trying to do some of the same strands, but we're also trying to cross and create our own strands that's going to be creative just for Florida.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. I mean, it is a breath of fresh air to hear that we're actually going to have a free market that actually works like a free market and actually does compete against not just ability to have product on the shelves, but to have quality product on the shelves. And
Right.
that should make a difference, and that will make you stand out from everybody else. As far as those medical directors concerned, I look forward to having your medical director on if he wants to come on. And Doug Smith from Sanctuary Medicinals, you are on watch right now. I've been trying to get you on the show for weeks now. You haven't been. I know where your dog is. I can give him to the Haitians at a moment's notice, and he'll be gone. Okay. Or you can come on the show and talk to us about your vision of medical.
Look at
Just
you,
say.
Gary, trying to appeal to a conservative audience. Oh, look at the baby. I gotta share something with you guys, man.
Mhm.
Like, they're okay. I got into an argument with somebody the other day. No, nothing special, I know, but in this particular case, right? This particular person was introduced to me by Mariah, the Canna Moms. And they came to me saying that they thought that marijuana should remain illegal, right? That they have now concluded that medical marijuana is really a crutch just to get high, And this is to show how much that bastard Ron DeSantis has influence on people, right? And she was saying the main reason was because it smelled like shit, and now everything in Florida smells like crap, like horrible.
Who are you
horrible.
talking to, Pam Bondi?
Yo, there are so many Pam Bondis all around us that have just been hiding, and now that Trump's been elected, right now they're coming out of hiding.
Okay, let's settle this. We said we were going to do it before, Carlos. In your store, you need to have a little testing stand where people get a chance to test out which they like the smell of better, terpenes or a mixture of beer and urine. And
you just need to. It's the difference between outside in Ybor City and inside my store. That's
what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever been in New Orleans on Bourbon Street? Right after a big party, the whole place smells of beer and urine, and you just can't escape it. You got to change your clothes when you get home. You know.
Yeah, Ybor Guadalupe in the late 90s is the worst smell than anything you're going to smell at a cultivation facility. So Ron DeSantis would take a long walk off a short bridge.
Not to get crap, not to get crappy, but not to get sappy. But this is definitely what you guys are talking about. We need people like Randy who care about the plant and care about the medicinal value of the plant and works to get rid of the stigma, because those stigmas are coming back now. Like they're having their day again. And organizations like Normal, we need to start focusing on breaking down these stigmas some more.
Well, Carlos, I think that's a great segue into the news.
Let's do it.
Daddy's gonna read the news. Well, folks should know that the incoming Senate Majority Leader for the Republican Party has a long history of opposing marijuana reforms. South Dakota Senator John Thune will lead the Senate in the 119th Congress, and he has long argued against efforts to reform marijuana policy at both the state and federal level. Senator Thune is among 26 GOP members who earlier this year called upon U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland to reject a recommendation from federal health officials to reclassify marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act. Quote, he said, "It is irresponsible for Health and Human Services to make this determination when emerging research shows that there are significant health concerns associated with marijuana use," unquote. Thune and his colleagues then opined, "It remains the case that marijuana has no currently accepted medical use. We urge you to withdraw this proposal and maintain marijuana as a Schedule I drug." I'm sorry that my son is here, but I have to say, fuck you, John Thune. So, all right, moving on. Some other political news folks should know about. In Nebraska, a district judge has upheld the voters-approved medical cannabis access initiative. In Nebraska, a district court judge has rejected a legal challenge that actually sought to invalidate a pair of citizen initiative measures regulating the possession, use, and production of medical cannabis. On Election Day, voters overwhelmingly approved both measures, despite the ongoing litigation. 71% of voters in Nebraska voted in favor of Measure 437, which permits qualified patients to possess and use cannabis. 67% of the voters backed Measure 438, which establishes a regulated system for the production and distribution of medical cannabis. Now, opponents of the initiative campaign argued that advocates had fraudulently gathered some of the signatures necessary to qualify for measures on the ballot. The judge rejected their argument, finding to prevail in this action, the plaintiff and secretary had to show that more than 3,463 signatures on the legalization petition and 3,357 signatures on the regulatory petition were invalid. The plaintiff and secretary were well short, with fewer than 1,000 of each petition were ruled invalid. So again, elections matter, the process matters, and putting the right people in office matters, because in Texas, the Republican State Attorney General Ken Paxton has now filed litigation that seeks to halt the city of Dallas from adopting a voter-approved measure prohibiting police from making low-level marijuana arrests On election day, Dallas, which has a population of 1.3 million people, and two other cities, Bastrop and Lockhart, Texas, all decided in favor of municipal ballot initiatives that limit the ability of local law enforcement to make misdemeanor possession arrests. These join the cities of Austin, Killeen, and several other Texas municipalities that have previously passed similar measures. The Attorney General has also filed suit against several of those cities, but his office has thus far been unsuccessful in halting their implementation. He says cities cannot pick and choose which state laws they follow, and the city of Dallas has no authority to override Texas drug laws or prohibit police from enforcing them. This is a backdoor attempt to violate the Texas Constitution, and any city that tries to constrain police in this fashion will be met swiftly with a lawsuit by his office. Now, state law defines marijuana possession of 2 ounces or less as a criminal misdemeanor in Texas and punishable by up to 180 days in jail, a $2,000 fine, and of course a criminal record. Texas Normal compiled data and showed that police made an estimated 219,000 marijuana arrests between 2017 and 2021. 97% of those arrests were charged with possession only, and 56% of those arrested were under the 25 years of age. So a lifelong criminal record for folks just getting started out because college-age folks decide to smoke a little bit of weed. That's just a damn shame. Now, if we want to talk about this whole cannabis doesn't have medical value thing, let's go to that. Let's talk about that, because a recent study coming out in the journal Curious showed that arthritis patients report substantial reductions in pain and other symptomatic improvements following their use of medical cannabis products. Investigators affiliated with the University of Central Florida's College of Medicine assessed the perceived efficacy of cannabis in a cohort of 290 patients diagnosed with either rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis, and the patients reported their pain levels prior to cannabis treatment and following the sustained use of the substance. Patients with RA typically inhale cannabis flower, while those with psoriatic arthritis typically administer topical forms. The patients reported a substantial reduction in pain severity post taking cannabis products compared to their baseline. Specifically, patients' mean pain levels fell from 6.16 prior to cannabis treatment to 3.89 following treatment, with many patients reported improvements in stiffness, fatigue, and joint swelling. The study also found that inhaled cannabinoids were the most common form used by RA patients, likely due to their rapid systemic absorption and quicker pain relief. In contrast, the psoriatic arthritis patients predominantly use the topical formations, which help with the localized effects beneficial for cutaneous symptoms. The study's authors concluded our data indicates the reduction in pain was statistically significant, suggesting that cannabinoids may help alleviate pain associated with these conditions. Overall, the findings contribute to the growing literature on cannabinoid therapy for arthritis symptoms, emphasizing the need for continued research to optimize research strategies for affected individuals. What does this mean? It means that clearly cannabis has medicinal value. The research isn't, we need to do more research to see if it's safe. It goes back to what Randy was saying earlier. We need to do more research so we can better tailor treatment options to people and what they need specifically. And so, interesting enough, a data being published in the Clinical of the Gerontologist coming out of the University of Texas. So when you see the bullshit that the Texas Attorney General and John Thune from South Dakota are saying, this needs more research. Well, the University of Texas assessed CBD use nationally in a representative cohort of older adults, and they found that just over 18% of those between 50 and 64 have reported in the past year CBD consumption. Among those 65 and over, slightly more than 14% report consuming CBD products. CBD use is common in the 65 and up age group and positively correlated with both medical and non-medical cannabis use. Separate survey data finds that a growing percent of adults similarly report using cannabis primarily to assist with anxiety, to improve sleep, and to relieve pain. So, clearly it's working. Now, let's look at what they're doing overseas and some of the other medical research. Clinical data that's being published in the Journal of Medical Cannabis and Cannabinoids showed that a team of Thai investigators conducting a phase 3 randomized double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial involving 100 patients diagnosed with diabetic neuropathy of the lower extremities. The participants received either a transdermal formulation containing THC, CBD, and CBN, or a placebo for 12 weeks. And the subject pain levels were assessed at a baseline and then at 4, 8, and 12 weeks. And the neuropathic pain symptom inventory scores decreased markedly from 25.6 to 5.57 in the treatment cohort, contrasted with minimum reduction from 25.24 to 22.85 in the placebo group. What does all that mean? The study's authors concluded that the novel transdermal medical cannabis formulation consisting of THC, CBD, and CBN demonstrated significant therapeutic efficacy in ameliorating painful diabetic peripheral neuropathy symptoms while maintaining a favorable safety profile. These findings provide robust clinical evidence supporting its potential as an innovative therapeutic option for managing painful diabetic peripheral neuropathy. Each and every week, we continue to give you more and more clinical data, more and more things to help you out. And so you should definitely spark up a cannabis conversation at your holiday table this year. Now, almost everyone at the holiday dinner table can agree upon it should be time to stop arresting responsible cannabis consumers. We know modern politics are divisive, but the need to legalize marijuana is one of the few issues that has united a majority of Republicans, Democrats, and non-party affiliated folks. And if you haven't had a cannabis policy discussion with your friends and family, now is the time, because all politics start locally, and it's going to take the grassroots effort to hold our elected officials accountable and make sure that they continue to do right by the people. NORML has all the facts you need for the case to make the case to end marijuana prohibition. And since its founding, NORML has sought to change the way people think about cannabis. And those changes occur with one conversation at a dinner table, one person at a time. And so in the past year, as you're stuffing the turkey, spark up a conversation, encourage your friends and family to join you on the right side of history, take action, support what we're doing here at NORML this holidays. You can go on to suncoastnormal.org, make a donation to help with our efforts. You can go to normal.org and check out all the amazing resources. Also, the book that Gary was showing, clinical applications for endocannabinoids and such. And, check out and get the research that you need to make the case to your family at the dinner table this holiday season. And, of course, we are only as strong as our membership, so we need each and every one of you to step up, donate your time, your treasure, and your talent as we head off to Tallahassee in this coming year and make sure that we can do right by the patients. And I just want to say a big thank you again to Randy Rembert and Rembert Family Farms for coming on the show today and being a part of what we got going on.
I like some.
Yeah, Godspeed to all of you guys. It was great having you on there because we have so much we have to do. We are going to head out to Tallahassee, but we're not coming empty-handed. We've got a slew of bills that we still have out there to try to fix all the glitches in the current system to protect your job, to protect your health, to protect you from having your kids taken away if you have a medical license in your home, to protect your Second Amendment rights, to be able to expand the number of qualifying conditions that would allow you to have cannabis. And the list is actually growing. We've got some other good bills that we're working on right now, including one on truth and labeling, because God knows there's a lot of non-truth in labeling. I found a couple packages the other day where they actually superseded one label on top of the other. They printed it on top so it was illegible. You couldn't actually tell what the CBD level was or anything else. And God knows what the heck you were actually smoking. And to be honest with you, with folks like Big Leave, you really have no idea what the hell you're smoking. That said, I do want to change the name of Kano's show to Daddy's Going to Read the News. I think that by itself would be absolutely wonderful.
What happened in calling Truly Boof Leave? I missed that.
We've used so many names over the years.
How horrible their product is than how big they are.
It's true. Well, again, y'all, we just need to continue to fight for a patient-centric system that, of course, is open to the average farmer to be able to get involved. And so, like I said before, I'm glad that Randy and his family are getting this opportunity. And there's still so much more work to do. And so we need each and every one of you to step up and join us in Tallahassee in making sure that happens. Go to suncoastnormal.org. Sign up for our mailing list, become a member, and of course, join us when we go up to Tallahassee for lobby days. And that way, Gary can walk up there with an army instead of just trying to corner these senators and representatives themselves at their secret interests as they try to sneak out of the office out of the back door. So
Oh, it's kind of fun. You have to put out some treats for them, though. And when they go after the treats, that's when you talk to them. But Randy, one quick
I
question.
remember the year we went up there with the hemp infused flan, and all the senators and representatives were just coming out of their offices. Shout out to Joe Lopez and Niati Flan for helping us out with that. So,
Randy, are there any FDA loans available for farmers to help build up their infrastructure for this particular project, that like what you're doing right now?
So it's ironic you say that. I had some damage to my greenhouses, and the USDA has been giving me a runaround for almost 3 weeks now. So technically, there are no USDA loans, and that's part of why it was so important to get like Amendment 3 passed and different legislation passed. There is until we get certain bills passed, the Banking Act passed, banks and commercial money is just not going to be available to us. Even when we're talking about the USDA, my part of the problem that my service agent is having is no one else is doing this. It's only 50 weed licenses out there, so that's close to 150 cultivators. The average person is doing watermelon, doing corn. So when I go to the USDA and I talk to them about loans and whatnot, they don't even have a category to put me in. Even when you're talking about hemp, they still don't have a category to put me in. So it's almost like we have to pioneer and we have to establish certain things just for us to get started.
Then it looks like we got our work ahead of us to get possibly some state money to help out
I
those
agree.
people who are building, to help out the farmers especially.
I agree. I totally agree.
When do you guys
Got my
think-
working papers.
When do you think they'll open up the license process again?
To be totally honest, what has not been said that's going to piss a lot of people off, because there ended up being 6 Pickford people. The state was not supposed to take those 6 Pickford people as applicants, but what they're going to do is take those 6 Pickford people and say that those licenses were given out. So with that being said, instead of 900,000, it's probably going to have to hit 1 million people with a card. And then even when you get to 1 million people with a card, there's going to have to be 2 people that will actually be awarded, because instead of 4 people per 100,000, they're taking 6 licenses away and saying that they gave it to the Pickford. So once they hit 1 million, that will only be 2 licenses available, because they're going to say that the other ones went to the Pickford, which the law was set up to where Pickford was not supposed to have an effect on that, but they're still going to use that as a means to not give out more licenses.
Oh, and by the way, Derek Ham did put out a article this last week, which did say that the good folks over at Big Leave are working towards pushing for a new hemp bill this year to destroy the hemp industry retail. Just so you know.
It's so great that all those hemp businesses were no on 3, and now we have another hemp bill to deal with. Jesus,
shocker!
Fucking Christ!
Now, this just to show you the investment was only temporary.
Republicans in the state played the hemp industry for fools.
I wanted to end this show on a high note, but I'm just gonna have to get high.
All right. I guess we're done, guys. Bye, everybody.
Where's my lighter?
Take care.